welcome to the Muscle Car Modeler. My name is Raul, and I know you're looking at your screen thinking, muscle car? Wide white walls? There are some cars that fall into kind of a gray area where they hit some of the targets of what a muscle car is, and other areas that don't. This is a 59 Thunderbird. It's actually an annual AMT kit that I had restored, but I'll get more into that, but I'll go more into the story of the Thunderbird for 59. One of the things that's interesting to note is in 59 Ford made, this was a small car. It's not really a small car when you see one today. It's a pretty large car. The Thunderbird has grown into a 4-seater by 58. 59, which is the model year represented here. Just a couple of different updates for it, but it's a highway cruiser, and you know they're just pretty cool cars, and I grew up around some of them, so I really know these cars pretty well. But I'll get into that a little bit more. But the specifics with this particular one. Now for 59, Ford had the Galaxies, the custom 300 and custom 300, custom 500, but it's the custom. And then they had the retractable Skyline and the Fairlane, all big full-size cars. Now keep in mind the Falcon, the smaller Falcon didn't come out until 1960, but this car was pretty much the smallest car they made in 1959. Another interesting note is the standard engine for this was the 352 FE motor. Made 300 horsepower, 380 foot-pounds of torque. It's like 4,600, 4,800 RPMs on that 352, and that was the standard motor. What's interesting is the optional motor for 1959. If you didn't know that, it was the MEL, which meant Mercury Edsel Lincoln 430 cubic inch motor. That's a big motor, especially for 1959. I can't think of anybody who had a bigger motor. In 58 and 59, actually I think it was 58, the Hemi was 392. I can't think of any other motors over 400 cubic inches in 1959. But that motor made 350 horsepower and 480 foot-pounds of torque, and it was 4,800 RPM screamer. And I believe every one that got the 430 was an automatic. These were also available with 3 on the tree, which very rare in a Thunderbird. But that was quite a big motor for 1959. And talk about putting your biggest motor in your smallest car in 1959. But it's one of the unique features of this car. Now those 430 cars are very rare. They didn't make a whole lot of them, and there's nothing on the outside that tells you what motor this thing had. Whether it was 352 or the 430 cubic inch. Now that 430 motor did not stick around very long. It was available in the 59 and 60 Thunderbird. In 61 they upgraded the FE motor to a 390. It was still rated 300 horsepower, but it made like 425 foot-pounds of torque, and it revved a little higher. But the 430, for whatever reason, disappeared, and it was only available in the Lincolns after that. Edsel was gone, but Lincoln was still around, and that motor lived in the Lincolns till about 66, and I think it grew to 468 cubic inches or something like that. But for a very limited time, it was available in the 59 Thunderbird. So I kind of think that's interesting, but these were highway cruisers. You couldn't get them with 411 gears. They came with like 310s, like 325 ratios, something like that. Had a Ford 9-inch in the back. But they were your personal luxury cruisers. Ford liked to market them, and the Thunderbird sold really well. They couldn't make them fast enough. A full-on unibody car. These fenders are welded on. The entire front end is welded. Rockers are welded. You can't unbolt any of the body parts. This one I started to dress up. It's got the chrome dress-up kit, so I foiled the headlight surrounds, the scoop, and all of the tail panels, which is part of the chrome dress-up kit. Added the Continental kit. That part is pretty hard to find. Made some resin copies of that, and so I had to do a number of them. But this 59 was a pretty fun restoration for me. You can see the dash there, the interior. This is one of my first restorations. I did this one, I think, about 2010. I had to buy a number of these, and because I love the Thunderbird and the story of the Thunderbird so much, um, I purchased a number of these and picked out the best parts and restored a few of them. And I know it's a vacuum formed window, and I believe, I'm not even sure if the bumpers are Model Haas or re-chromed originals. The chrome was done by Chrome Tech. Tires on this one are originals. They're acrylic painted. Model Haas makes some. Some of my other ones have the Model Haas tires on it. And foiled and chromed it. The hard part with these is the convertibles are much easier to find than the hardtop ones. They were both available in kit form. And these fender ornaments are also Model Haas. But for some reason, most of them I found a ton of them that were unpainted, but they had all of the custom parts glued on them. So it requires a bit of body work to remove the glue marks, or find some where the emblems were not sanded off or destroyed. But another thing that's kind of interesting with these, if you don't know these, the kits were actually made out of plastic. The bodies do not warp. They're made out of a really sturdy plastic. But the promos, which are virtually the same, and even have the same chassis for the 59s and 60s, the screw bottom chassis, the bodies are acetate and they warp really bad. Matter of fact, they're valued by, the warp is considered in their value, so the less warped, the more valuable they are, but warpage is so normal you expect it when it comes to the promos. But the kits, they're made out of plastic. Now the 59 kit, the hood is molded shut. You can't see the motor. There's no motor in the kit. The 60 AMT kits were one of the first ones where the hood actually opened and they had an engine in it. The promos did not. 58, they did do promos, but no kits. And the 58 promos have just a steel plate for a chassis. So those ones, the bodies warp, but the chassis is a steel plate, and they don't warp at all. But this is one of my restorations, one of my favorite cars. Kind of love the story of the Thunderbirds and the personal luxury and the power that went along with it. And like I said, I grew up around these. My dad has 5 of them. They're all hard tops and they're all 352 cars. But I grew up in them. He's got 358s, a 59, and a 60. I took my driver's test when I was 16 years old in his 59 T-Bird. So that was a fun story for me. But I really enjoy these cars, and they're quite lookers. They really sold well. Ford just could not make them fast enough. They made like 30-something thousand 58s, and it started late in the production run with delays. So they made the 57 longer, but the 58 came out, it was delayed. So it was like 30-something thousand 58s and only 2,000 convertibles. It was like 2,158 convertibles, because the convertible came even later. These were originally going to be also a hardtop retractable in the concept design, but the roof was too big and the trunk was too small, so that's why there's no convertible boot. If you ever seen one of these work, it's all, the trunk comes up, the convertible boot goes all the way into it, and it closes down, and there's no actual visible convertible. So they do look like the roofs are cut off, which I like that look, and Thunderbirds kept that from 58 all the way to 66. So it's just one of my favorite cars. Got a number of them, so a little sneak peek for you. Back this out just a little bit here, and then so there's a 58 I had built from AMT kits. Here's a 60, and here's another 60. those are some of the ones I had restored. I'll get more in depth on those particular builds, but these are fun cars for me, and quite an interesting peek into the future of what's coming from Ford. Also really like the styling of these cars, as you can tell, but I'll get more into the other ones, but I figured I'd kind of sneak peek them together and kind of group them together in the photo here. But thank you for tuning in.